Spiritual experiences. What you would read in a book, a religious book, a good religious book, could be called an esoteric experience, a mystical experience. Mystical meaning in this way that it's something that can't be explained in words. I can't convey it to you with my words. You can't understand it on the level of your intellectual level, of your verbalization. You can't understand it, and I can't explain it. So it has to go higher than that. And later on in the talk, I'll indicate a certain point to you more clearly, where you'll see where there's no use going on anymore in the old ways of trying to fight life, of trying to fight for yourself. There's no point continuing with the old efforts. And when you see this, there's no point continuing with the old efforts. That's the beginning of the long journey through the valley of the shadow of great terror. Because you can't turn to yourself anymore. You can't turn inwardly anymore. But you don't know what the alternative is. And you demand to know the alternative before you let go of what you presently have, and that will never, never work. You have to let go where there's no assurance of what's going to happen to you next. You can't cling to anything. You can't cling to a book, any book, or any human being, or any of your own experiences. There has to be just a letting go. But when you do that, your consciousness of the battle of life increases. You see what you now suspect. And the seeing of that is the beginning of real domination over it, real conquest over the whole world, real conquest over this whole world you live in. But the conquest, as you should know by now, is simply the conquest over your own mad world inside. So that you see that the two were indeed one thing, two ways of seeing one thing, the madness here and the madness there. If I'm not insane here, I can't be afraid of your insanity. You're not afraid of a vicious lion. You may be physically, but we're not talking about that. You're not afraid of a lion in the zoo who growls at you and roars at you and jumps at the bars toward you. You're not afraid of that lion psychologically, intuitively. You should be, because that's your physical self that's perhaps in danger. But psychologically, you're not afraid of that lion for one reason. You understand him. You understand that your intelligence is superior to the lower, much lower level intelligence of the lion. And that's very evident by the fact that you, other people, and you, put that lion in a cage, but you're not afraid of that lion, really afraid of him, as long as he's physically separated from you, because you understand him. When you're in this higher mystical experience that we're going to explore for a while, you're not afraid of that lion of a husband, of a friend, of a relative. You're not afraid of the mass of lions called society as a whole. When you look out at it and see society as a mass broken down into individuals, then you can't fear it. Anything you thoroughly understand, there's no way that you can recoil from it and fear that they're going to hurt you. Your very understanding dissolves all types of hysterical behavior going on inside you. There very definitely is such a thing as a very, very high, different kind of experience, religious experience. It's spoken of many times and in many different ways in books and in talks. And it's alluded to as best that the speaker or author can do as we are doing right here now, trying to tell you that there is a higher world up here which can't be seen with physical eyes, which can't be seen through the glasses of your own past experiences. But the fact is, and this is, see how cheerful our talks are here. The fact is, this higher world that you have not ascended to as yet, but which you're thinking about exploring in a certain way, definitely, most definitely exists. Now it exists, and if I could take the time, I would gesture to each one of you here. It exists for each one of us here, or anyone out there, who will begin to explore it, which is again what we're doing. This mystical, truly spiritual experience comes from God. It comes down, way up here, down here, to the individual who's exploring. To the individual who doesn't take his words, God, spirituality, religion, inner experience, who doesn't take his descriptions as the actual state. He's seen through the inner fakery too strongly to ever going back and believing in it again. What a interesting mystical experience that is, to arrive at the mark along the trail where you know from yourself, all by yourself, within yourself, clearly, definitely, emphatically, you can no longer accept a lie as the truth. You can no longer accept self-deception as self-advancement. You know you can't accept it. There's no way you can go along with it anymore. You've seen too much. You've understood too much. And that's an experience in itself, a very preliminary one, which will lead to far greater things. The people of this world do not want any experiences except the same ones they had yesterday, the same ones they had last month, the same ones they had 5 years, 20 years ago. This is what the world lives for. A repetition of the familiar feelings, human relationships, even fighting human relationships. Isn't it peculiar? Do you suspect that within you, as you are hearing me now, that there are parts in you that yearn, that look forward to, that expect, that hope to meet another human being tomorrow or 6 months from now with whom you can have a fight? I'm telling you that this sort of dark, unconscious force exists in practically everyone on earth, and you'll have to see for yourself whether it's a part of you or not. And I'll tell you how you can find out. If you fight with anyone over anything from this moment on, then that is evidence that you wanted the fight. This was your world. This was your world where you used relationship on the physical level, mental level, psychological and emotional level to try to make it appear as if you're having, as if a person, someone in you, is having a relationship with the other person. Well, don't I have lots of friends? Don't I have 100 friends? I fight with every one of them. I had 100 fights in the past. That means I had 100 relationships. And it doesn't even occur to us to examine what we just said. Is there any relationship, a right relationship, with anyone with whom we're in contention with? I'm not even in right contact with myself, so how can I be in contact with anyone else? This is the area, the world, the desert that society as a whole has chosen to live in. And there can be no real mystical experience, spiritual adventure in that. There can only be madness, insanity, repetition of the same old thing. And as long as there's no wish to go beyond that, then this is the way most human beings live and eventually fade away. And if some of you here don't wake up, I will give you an exact prophecy of what's going to happen to you. You're going to fade away. Now, what do you think of that? I can see it in your faces. I can see it in your manner. I can see it happening to you every time I look at you. I can see you fading away because you won't fight for yourself. Not only will you not fight for yourself, but you won't let anyone else fight for you. All right, you have just put yourself in the classification of those human beings who are going to live as they've always lived, nothing new, nothing beautiful, only the old agony, peering out at life, hoping for something bright to come along, something hopeful to come along. I will tell you that you're going to peer out at that world, waiting for a knight on a white horse for the rest of your life, and you're going to wait in vain. So even as I'm talking to you, you're going to make a decision of one kind or another, or you're going to try to listen to what I'm telling you and be willing to accept whatever experience may come to you as a result of letting go, any experience at all, in order to see what it's all about, to see for yourself whether there's anything beyond the desert. I know there is. I know there is. There's no way you can know by me telling you this, me telling you that there's a beautiful mountain up there that you can live on. It has no mystical meaning to you. It has a wordy meaning to you. It may sound right, and it may sound encouraging, which is all right because it's the truth. Any truth you're told that's encouraging and that's right is encouraging right now. But don't take it and twist it as you hear it. Don't let your mind reach in and grab it and say, that will come to me automatically, for example, without effort on my part. Oh, it sure sounds nice to hear that there is another place. You would better start personalizing everything. Get very personal so that eventually impersonalization can come. And this is very complex, but personalization and impersonalization must alternate back and forth. Isn't it getting very personal when you are insulted here? Look, see, nobody dares get personal with you out in that world or right in your own home. People won't tell you the truth about yourself, not having told the truth about themselves, because they have certain love of the dryness of the desert, of the sand posing as water. They want it for themselves. Therefore, they're not going to disturb their world. We're getting very personal when we tell you, as I told you a couple minutes ago, you're going to fade away. I'm talking very literally to you. I can see it in your faces. I know. I look at you when you don't know I'm watching you. I catch you when you're off guard. And I can see the sagging lines. And I can see the hopelessness in your faces. And I can see when you get caught in various kinds of hallucination. And you don't know you're in that state. So I've spoken to you quite frankly, telling you that you're going to have to jolt yourself out and get all the help you can. When we're brought into this world, we're all brought in our own little boat, sailboat. The boat is in harbor. It's not out on the sea. We're born, I'm using a figure of speech. We're all in our separate little boat. No one else is in there with us. We're all alone in it. And we're born into this world, all our separate little boats in the harbor. Sails ready to go up and sail whenever we want out into the world. Most people don't do that because, you see, it takes effort. It takes work to understand what the boat is all about. You're not born with an understanding of it at all. You don't know, for example, that that white thing that's wrapped around the mast is a sail. Furthermore, you don't know that you have to make the effort of climbing up a little bit and take the ropes off that's holding it together, and unwrap the rope. And when you do that, then something by itself will happen. It will begin to fall away a little bit, and you'll say, hey, that's a yard of sail. And you say, let's wrap it around there. I see what I have to do. I have to unwrap it around there. And then you're not quite sure what to do next. There it is, the flapping sail there. You finally see a hook someplace. You see a hook down on the deck there somewhere, and you understand the connection. You find a rope somewhere that just is the right length for hooking it to the sail, putting it down on the boat. We have to go through many years of understanding what the boat is all about and how it operates in this world. This is what is known as self-knowledge, studying the inner nature as it relates to outer things and see how they work together. Most people don't want to do this because it takes extra effort. You can't sit back and peer around and expect to move out of the harbor. Most people are peerers, looking out, looking for something to pounce on, looking for some little advantage, waiting for someone to come over and smile at them. Will you stop living that way? I see it here all the time. What the rest of the world wants to do is of no concern to me. What all those people in their separate little boats in that large harbor want to do should be of no concern to you at all. What do you care if they want to sit there in the harbor enjoying the sick sights on shore of the sick world there, the cafes, and the madness, and the politics, which they like to be involved in. All they have to do is get out of the boat and walk down the pier, and there they are involved in it. That is what they call the safety of the harbor. The harbor is killing them. They don't see it because they're right next to all the madness which they have chosen to be a part of. The mystical voyage, the spiritual adventure begins as we have sat in our boat, looked around, looked at the other people bringing all their madness back to the boat and pretending that they're happy, reading their exciting newspapers about the stock market going up, or even happy, yes, sir, being very happy when the stock market goes down because now they can groan. When you groan, all groans make and cement you to this world, and that makes you very, very happy in your misery, that you are a part of something that you call solid. I'm a part of the insanity. Isn't that great? If, therefore, I am a part of something, I'm related to something, related to other people, no exertion is required. All I have to do is sit there and complain, never investigate the boat itself to see whether there are other possibilities. We're here today, and for other classes, to see whether there are other possibilities. And I've told you that they do indeed exist. My telling you this is simply telling you about the boat. I'm telling you can unwrap the sail, hook it up properly. You can pull up the little anchor that your little individual boat has. When you understand the steering wheel a little bit, and you understand how the wind relates to the sail, just a little bit, you can understand how if something that is not a part of that harbor but blows in from the open sea, that wind that blows in from the open sea into the harbor has in some very interesting way a relationship to the boat that you didn't understand before and couldn't understand before when the sail was wrapped around the mast. But having done your part of unwrapping it and hooking it up a little bit and understanding things a little bit, you can now see how what you did brings about an understanding between what you had already, the boat, but undeveloped because it was misunderstood. How the wind itself will move the boat. What I'm telling you is many, many years of inner work. Now you begin to understand how something outside of the harbor, something that's coming in from the open sea, coming and blowing into the harbor, does move the boat a little bit. Finally, all the elements of sailing a boat come to you very clearly, somewhat clearly at the start. You see that if you turn the steering wheel this way, the boat goes that way. Turn the steering wheel that way, the boat goes that way. Or if you adjust the sail a little bit, according as the wind comes in, it will move this way or that way. You might have to tack going back and forth, or you could go straight. You can go in any direction. You can go any direction you want as long as you understand the wind as it relates to the sail and to the boat. So you start to move around a little bit. Move around, and you say, well, I didn't understand that this thing could move. You were born in the boat. You didn't understand. Nobody else was moving. You look around. They're all stationary, too. You didn't understand it. But you, because you were sick of the bars down there and all the madness that was called sanity on shore, you begin to understand the possibilities of the boat, and it begins to move. And you see that life, I used to think life was stationary. It had to be repetitious, going down to the bar every night and getting my thrills there, coming back and going to sleep, then getting up and going, getting a newspaper and reading about my stuff. But all the time, my life was actually stationary, and I didn't realize that it was stationary because I didn't suspect that there was a movement also. If all I know is something stationary, then all I know is something stationary. But the dissatisfaction with the bars and the newspapers and the stocks, the dissatisfaction caused me to explore my position where it actually was, and the sail began to unfurl and began to move a little bit. A great wonderment, I have had my next mystical experience, the fact that there is such a thing as a different kind of movement that I ever knew before. I knew the movement by my own legs to the shore, but this is not, my legs aren't involved in this at all. Something that is not a part of me, something that's coming from way out there is beginning to blow in from here and to move me in a way that it's a miracle, a mystical miracle. So I get at the wheel and I adjust the sail a little bit. Hey, movement, this is great. What a nice feeling. What an authentically new experience. It's new. I know it's new. No one has to tell me. I knew what the old was, therefore I know what the new was. So I move the boat around a little bit in the harbor, and I'm delighted, and I look around in great pleasure, and because I'm looking around in great pleasure, all of a sudden, crash. I bumped into another boat. What's this? I thought all was well. I thought all was beautiful. All my dreams and expectations of sailing around, owning the whole harbor, what right does he have to be in that harbor? And I scream and say, what right do you have to be in my way? He screams back. The man in the other boat screams back. So I turn the wheel a little bit, turn in another direction. Hey, I sure like this movement. Bang. And someone yells profanity at me from another boat because I crashed into him. This is what I've said in about 30 seconds is many years again of personal experience of bumping into other boats after having understood that movement, a different kind of movement, higher movement is possible. Crashing into people and not understanding. You thought, well, I thought the movement itself was going to answer all questions. Instead it brought up more questions. I used to be so peaceful with other people. I'd sit next to a bunch of loudmouth people at the bar. Of course, I was a little loud myself at times. But we didn't fight. Here I'm getting religious and getting hostile. Oh, I see. I was hostile sitting on that bar stool, but didn't know it because I called myself a nice person, and I pushed it. Wow. What experience this is, to see how much hatred I had in me. I yelled, don't you tell me off like that. And I don't say bad words outwardly because that shocks me, but I think them inwardly. And even that shocks me somewhat. So after many, many years of bumping into other people in their individual boats, all of a sudden one morning it becomes clear to me that something else is happening. And what else is happening is this. On any given day, previously, I averaged the bumping into other people, fighting with other people, about 10 times a day. And it happened so slowly that it took a little bit of time for me to understand, oh, what do you know? I'm only bumping into 5 people a day now. Not only that, but since I'm only bumping into 5 people, there must be a reason for it. And there are 2 reasons for it. One is, I'm beginning to be more skilled in understanding what the wind that's coming in there is trying to tell me in relationship to my personal boat. And so when I see someone in their stationary boat and I start heading toward them, this skill connected with the wind itself, it's not my skill, it's a compliance with the wind. It's a harmonization with the wind. I can change the sail a little bit, turn the wheel a little bit. I don't bump into him. No fight. He doesn't yell at me, I don't yell. I avoid it. The second reason, there's half as many boats where I am now. And then another realization comes to me. Well, what do you know? I'm halfway out of the harbor. I didn't even know there was a halfway out of the harbor. I thought it was just one big thing. But now, seeing fewer boats out there and being able to weave in and out of them, I used to think that the harbor was the entire ocean. Somebody said, here's your world. Here's your world. See all these boats? See, you can see the outer boat out there, the farthest boat you can see. That's the end of the world out there. That's the last boat. That was my world, and someone said, well, that's what they call the ocean. You're in the sea. Well, it's a pretty good sized sea, all right, but that's it. There's a limit to it. I am seeing for myself that there's the limitation I took in my own mind is true, was there because people told me. I just didn't challenge it. But my movement in that boat, my sailing of it, I'm beginning to see that beyond the last boat, and I'm getting fairly near that farthest out boat, that there's something out there, and there's nothing out there, because I can't see any more boats. All I see is the ocean, endless, boundless way out there, and I don't know what's out there at all. But I sure like the feeling of going in the direction in which I'm going. I now see how I hated, how in despair I was over the stagnation of that harbor, calling it a nice, exciting life. I called it a nice, exciting life because I was able to get mad all day long and come back to the boat and cry and be fearful, and yet looking forward to the same battle again tomorrow. So I go out beyond the last boat, mystical experience, and I start sailing out, and I say to myself, this is what is called freedom. This is what is called inner beauty. This is what little books I read, picked them up. I had nothing, the stock market. I didn't have a stock market report, so I picked up an idle book, anything to read, and it said something about tranquility, inner peace. This is what it's called. How nice. I'm a free human being out in the world, sailing wherever I want to go. I understand this boat a little bit. Well, I guess I'll take a nap and just drift around. So he lies down, he takes a nap. All of a sudden, he feels all wet. And he wakes up. And he's never been more terrified, horrified in his life. Because he's in a storm. The rains are pounding in on his little boat, and the waves are 10 times as high as the boat. The boat spins around. He has to grab onto something and not to be washed overboard. The lightning's coming down, the thunder's coming. Nobody told me this would happen to me if I left the harbor. If they told me this, I wouldn't have left. What happened to the tranquility? What happened to the beauty I talked about? What happened to the marvelously free life? I didn't expect this at all. I thought I had it made. And now I'm in mortal fear of my very existence. So he's in the storm. Now I want to tell you something I spoke of earlier. At this point in my talk, we've done okay together, haven't we? We've followed. Now at this point, I'm going to continue to talk, and I'm even going to continue with the illustration. But right now, the words will have far less meaning because I'm going to try to talk to you on with a higher level. I've been all along. But I have to leave the illustration behind because the illustration has so many lacks in it. The illustration said, you in the boat. There's no you in the boat, but we have to say so for the purpose of illustration. There's boat. There's no boat. We talked about a storm. I have to talk about a storm on the level of describing things in an elementary way, but there's really no storm. But there's a storm only if there is you to be in the storm. So try to rise above words, ordinary thinking with me as I go along, and we'll complete the talk. Right out in the middle of the storm, I have a mystical experience of a very high order. Something that is coming down from heaven has come down in answer to the various prayers, requests I made, starting at the point where I questioned the value of going to the bar every night and reading stock market reports. So I decided one night to stay at home in the boat and investigate where I was living. And I saw that little flap of sail there and wondered why it was hanging loose. And I said, maybe that connects with that whole big white thing's up there. I'm out in the storm now, and my prayers and requests that started there, and my other requests, prayers to something higher, to go out and see what is boundless out there, that has been answered by God, by reality with a capital R. And it comes down to me, and I'm sitting there hanging on to the boat, to the handle, the bars there I have to hang on to in order to not be swept overboard. And I look up and those waves are coming right down on the boat, and I think if they ever crash down, I'll never come up again. Now let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. If you ever get in this position where you're hanging on to the boat in the middle of the fury, and you look up and you see that mountainous wave come down on you, let me tell you something. Don't you ever forget what I'm going to say to you next. You're in a beautiful position now. This horrible position is a beautiful position. This means you have made advancements where you begin to recognize the storm. The people on shore in their boats living on, they don't know what a storm is. You now know what a storm is, don't you? Because you're experiencing it. You're in it. You're experiencing it consciously with awareness. You're in it. This is great. The power of the force comes down from up here, the force which sent the wind comes down. And now remember what I said about the end, the limitations of the illustration. And at this point, because you have stuck with the adventure thus far, you have qualified yourself for the next miraculous mystical experience. And what you have qualified yourself for is this. as you're clinging there, thinking you're going to perish, and stay with it over a period of time, days, weeks, right in the center of that storm, another experience comes to you. Remember the earlier ones you had? What's this sail all about? And then how I see this open sea, the harbor is not the whole world. Now you have another one, which happens as follows. You begin to notice at a certain point that the waves that did indeed, that mountainous wave that did indeed crash right down onto your boat, and you did come up from it, soaking and wet and miserable, and then another one came down, and this went on and on and on for a long, long period of time. At a certain point, the next magic, real magic occurs, inward magic, which is recognition, which is insight, which is perception. You notice for the first time that mountainous wave is only 3/4 as high as the previous one. Then a little later you notice that the wave is only half as high. Then you notice only quarters high. Then you notice that it's just enough to give the boat a fairly severe rock, but not to send it spinning all around the foam and the waves there, and then finally uprighting itself again. And you sit there in silent wonder. You sit there in silent wonder at what is happening to you. You didn't make anything happen. Something is happening to you from way up here. You sit there fascinated. Then you begin to notice the continuing phasing of this. You notice that the waves on the sides are getting lower and lower and lower. The boat is rocking less and less and less. And you begin to see that this power that is coming down from up there is the same thing as your command of the boat. While you're in the storm as yet, this wisdom, this intelligence that is coming down now becomes your wisdom and your intelligence. Therefore, you, and yet not you, are in charge of the boat. And at the same time you're in charge of the boat, what's happening outside of you also becomes different. The waves are getting lower. This goes on. This is another experience that goes on for many years. Then the next step. You're sitting in your boat and it's just rocking a little bit now. There's still some waves and white caps out there. But more gentle all the time. And you're sailing forward. You notice that the storm is furious as it was when you first entered it, when you first fell asleep and then woke up in it. You notice that it's furious way out there to the left. It's still as vicious way out there to the right. It's still furious way out in front of you. Still furious way out in back of you. Way out at a long distance, a very large circle, the storm is raging as it always did. But as it gets closer and closer to you, to your position in the boat, it loses power. It gets weaker until another and pretty much final phase of your truly mystical voyage. Your boat is sailing, it's going forward, it's moving, it's going someplace. But within 100 yards, left, right, front, back, perfect, smooth, calm sea. Flat, just a little bit is water, a little bit like that. And you're right in the middle of this calmness, surrounded by the storm. And as you continue to sail forward, the storm ahead of you recedes. In other words, you're never out of it. You're in it all the time, right in the center of whatever you want to call this now, and you now see, well, what do you know? I was very deceived when I thought that when I entered this open sea, I thought that that is what was called peace. I thought that was what was called inner victory. That was called self-command. Well, I'll never deceive myself like that again, because I went through that experience. Go to the start, look at the little flap of sail that's loose. Go to the end of this authentically mystical experience, and you'll now know what it is to be in the world, but not be of it. Because you are right on the sea itself, but because something higher than you is now commanding that boat, now directing it, a higher intelligence, there's no way that the storms can possibly penetrate and overwhelm anymore, because you somewhere have understood the instructions coming from up there, understood the instructions that you have to give up trying to guide the boat yourself. You have to give up trying to fight the waves, the storm itself, and have to turn the whole business, inner, outer, distance, close, you have to turn the whole thing over to something else which you don't know quite what word to put on it yet, and you're a little hesitant to even put the word God on it, because you used that word before when you're in trouble only, God help me, and then when you get out of trouble you forgot the word God. You find out that it doesn't make any difference whether you put a word, a label onto this source of help or not, because it's there and it's yours. I've described to you a mystical adventure that you can all enter, go through, and come to the very end of, and find the true life for which you were put here, for which you were put on earth to find, and which you can have. All lost people, all people who have not found the real meaning of life, live in two alternating sentences. The first sentence is, this is it. The second sentence is, this is not it. Need I say any more? As long as the self describes truth, as long as it attributes truth to another idea in itself, which it calls itself, did you follow that? There's the word truth. Then you add another idea that says I. Then you say, I know the truth. I can never know the truth. Bruce can never know the truth. Joan can never know the truth. Vernon can never know the truth. I have to see what I'm doing against myself when I say, I know the truth. I found peace. And what I have to do is remind myself of the lie, the contradiction. This is it. I finished that study course in metaphysics, or went to church for 20 years. This is it. You don't notice yourself when you unconsciously groan, this is not it. You don't hear yourself saying that. You don't notice the turning point where at first you're saying, this is it. There's the big party tonight, and I'm looking forward to it, and I go to it, and this is it. This is it. I've got something exciting. This is life. See, this is the people in the harbor. This is it. You don't notice that after the ball is over and you come back to the boat, you don't observe, you don't witness yourself crying and saying, this is not it, and you have to do it. Where there is a this is it, there has to be a this is not it. They must be. They always go together. When you really have it, that means it's above saying it, needing to say it, because the saying it is an attempt to convince yourself that you have it. This is why it's such torture. I have to repeat over and over and over, I've got it. And if I don't make it financially, if I keep saying this is it, I'm going to make a lot of money, this is it, this is it, but it goes on and on after 10, 20 years and I don't make it financially, and if I can't say this is it toward finances, then I join a monastery. The other was not it, this is it. Point is this. I want you to notice where you turn from sweet to sour. You notice when you switch from being sweet, that is, you've got it made, to where you're suddenly aware that you don't have it made and you turn sour. I see more sour than sweet in here, of course. If you don't catch the point where it begins to change, you won't know you changed. You watch at the point where you have what you call a good relationship with another person, a good relationship. And because you are under the spell of this world and of your own mind, when something displeases you in that relationship, or you get bored with it, and you start to swing away from that person, notice you're swinging away, and don't lie about the reason, or you won't see the real reason. The real reason is because you had a wrong relationship with that person in the first place, and now you're tired of it, or whatever. When you have a right relationship with one person in this world, you must have a right relationship with everyone else on earth, which does not mean necessarily a close relationship. The right relationship with lions is to have a K of bars between you. But it's a right relationship because it's based on understanding. I'm talking about an unconscious turning in your mind, or you suddenly hate someone that you loved a minute ago. If you don't catch the turn in your mind, it will happen without you seeing it, and you won't know that you're in a different attitude state toward that person. Finalization. Stay so awake that you can see your sudden switching of an attitude toward another person. You can see it the opposite way too. You think you hate someone, all of a sudden you, quote, love that person. Watch the changing point. And then you'll see many other things. For example, that there are many people in you, many different kinds of people in you. The lover, the hater, the indifferenter, and so on. Have any of you had friends or relatives who scorned what you've got here? Or scorned your own efforts? Or scorned your leaving of the church or whatever other false institution you were in? Pay no attention to them. And it becomes much easier, oh so easy, to ignore people like that when you have begun to connect the sail with the wind that's coming in from the ocean. Because you're looking at something higher, and it has fascinated you. You wouldn't have believed that there's such a thing as that. You couldn't see how the wind was coming before because it was just the wind was going around the pole. And how can it move the ship when it's going around the pole? But you, by your personal effort, personal you said consciously, begin to unwrap it a little bit and see that there is a relationship between what was there all the time but wrapped up and that wind that's coming in. And now you want to see more of a relationship. The wind is blowing this way, and I put the sail this way, and the boat moves that way. See, your right attention is there instead of on that sarcastic husband or that indifferent friend, wife, whatever. And to ignore them takes no effort because your attention is on what you really now prefer, which is something else, which is something that is really for you. And as that continues, you then know more clearly, don't you? And I know you could all nod your heads to this. You know more clearly that husband or wife or friend is a lion, you see it very clearly and you want nothing to do with it. Let them roar all they want. You're not going to pay attention to that. We take the storm, we accept the storm, if you can get what I'm saying, as being essential to our survival. And what we really should say, if we could say it with clarity, and the storm is very necessary to the survival of my sickness. The storm and the sickness being the same thing. I must love the storm. I must want to be in it because I am it. I and the storm are one thing. To give up the storm is to give up me. Therefore, I treasure it until I get a little brains and see something higher than that. Wake up as fast as you can when you feel yourself starting to be carried away from yourself. When you're in a hateful, antagonistic, hostile mood, manner, emotions, aren't you being carried away from yourself? The minute you feel the smallest urging to run away and hit somebody, verbally, or physically, anyway, come awake and sit back and watch it try to take you over, and the very watching of it will weaken its power.
When we have these emotional storms, and sometimes it comes so quickly that we can't fight it or drop it, isn't it best to stay with it and let it burn until it comes out?
You understand the storm by being the storm. If you are the storm and you stick with it, at the same time watching what's happening to you, this is the beginning of seeing that the storm has you, while the storm has what you call you. Your actual nature, essential nature, is not that storm. You're not calling the storm you anymore. You're beginning to impersonalize. Now, I'll give you an example. How many of you talk to yourself? How many of you have an idiotic conversation with yourself? All right, as your project for the rest of today and the rest of your life, you will watch yourself, especially when you're alone. Sometimes you say it out loud, don't you? Say it out loud. You're walking across the room and you make some little idiotic remark. What's an idiotic remark? Maybe you've had experience. Could you help me? When that happens, whatever it is, say something like, as a watcher, saying something like, "It said that. Look, it said that." So you're beginning to depersonalize. Instead of saying, "Boy, I'm sure glad nobody heard me make that idiotic remark." See, you've identified with it already. You've taken it as being you. But if you say, "There it goes again," right? There it goes again. You're beginning to separate, depersonalize, and break its power.
Do I understand that the storm, that people that never venture out of the harbor never see the really big storm?
That's right, that's right. How can they?
Little petty storms.
How can they when they are the storm of their fierce ambitions to make a lot of money, their fierce ambitions to be somebody? You can't see the storm as long as you're so closely involved in it. And I wanted to make a special point in that story, which you will see for yourself. And I explained a little bit with "this is it" and "this is not it." Endlessly, over and over and over, you will think because you ventured beyond the harbor that this is it. It's not it. There are many more things to run into that you didn't expect. Remember one thing, don't you ever be dismayed over anything that happens to you, because the very saying, "This is not it," and you may say it with great discouragement, the very saying of "this is not it" is progress. Because you're now seeing what you formerly called a truth, you're seeing the lie of your state, or formerly saying "this is it." Endlessly that goes over and over and over, seeing how silly we have been in thinking we had it made when we didn't at all. Won't you agree that haste, speed, nervous impulsiveness, running is hauling us away from where we should be? And where should we be? Well, You can be very relaxed. And you can just wait. You can just wait for something to come to you instead of searching for something to come to you. See the difference in the two? Let me repeat that. And you see the difference in waiting for something to come to you and searching for something. If you're searching, you're frantic. If you're searching, you're trying to protect you. If you're searching, you don't know who you are and you're trying to pick one of the 50 eyes out of the hat. If you're searching, it means you don't understand that you don't exist as you think you do exist. But waiting, now that's another thing. Here I am, confronted with any kind of a problem. It makes no difference what the difficulty is. Whether it's financial, whether it's health, whether it's a human relation, whether it's my own inability to understand things in this class. If I can sit back, having understood the principle, the theory of waiting for something higher to come to me, won't that all at once make me not want to search anymore for the answers that don't answer anything, for the self-protective devices? So I sit back and wait for whatever comes, but not knowing what it's going to be, talking to someone else. I'm not talking about intellectual knowledge. If you ask me how to fix a roof, I say get tar paper and nails and a hammer. That's out of knowledge, out of memory. But if you ask me a psychological question, a spiritual question, what's going to happen to human beings in the future? How is human nature going to straighten itself off from the mess it's got itself into? You ask me a question like that. If I try to answer, it means I'm trying to impress you and trying to impress myself that I know what's... Who cares what's going to happen? All is well with me. Oh, you say that's selfish. Truly selfish people would wreck the universe and all 4 billion people in it. Really selfish people. But anyway, back to the original point. You ask me a spiritual question, something about human relations that has to do with psychology, with the way the mind works, with spiritual things, with divine things. You ask me that question, and if I slow down, I don't answer abruptly because I want to show you how smart I am. I am forced to look at the slowness. I'm forced to look at the silence, and the very looking at that will give me knowledge that I never had before. The first knowledge being how sure I am of myself at the minute I reply from my intellect, from my conditioning, how sure I am of myself as long as I'm talking to you, because I've got vitality in my answer. That vitality arising from my wish to impress you and myself that no matter what the question is, I have an answer. Ever know anyone like that? No matter what you ask them, they have the answer to it, bang, bang, so sure of themselves. I can see how sure I am of myself while I'm talking to you. And I can see that I can see that the surety, the certainty, the assurance I have in myself is nothing but a bluff. But I can't see it at the minute because all the noise of my words themselves, of my mind working, of my gestures, all that is blocking out anything higher than that. So I may have to go, or you may have to go, for many, many years pretending that I know what I'm talking about. I saw an actor the other day, not the other day, it was some time ago, but I saw him the other day and reminded me of it. I saw an actor, a very well-known man that you would know if I mention his name, who was talking politics. And he knew the answer. No, inflation. Should we sign the peace treaty or should we reject it? Should we increase the army or should we give foreign aid, whatever it might. Isn't it astounding that that man knows the answer to every question? And more astounding that nobody appreciates a mind like that? Well, that's because he really didn't know the answers, didn't have the answers, but he was in the state that I'm talking about, where he's so bluffed by himself, by the noise of his own mind, that that man will have very, very little chance, almost no chance, to ever go above the mechanical recall of everything inside him that he's acquired, that he's identified with, that says, I know the answer. The opposite of this impulsiveness, of this lack of self-knowledge, the opposite of the impulsive talking, I sit back and I don't care whether I answer you or not. If I care to give you an answer, the answer is going to be wrong. If I care what you think of me when I say this or that, the answer is going to be a fake. It all connects very much, and you should know this too, it all connects very much with my need to first of all impress myself that I know what I'm talking about, therefore I am safe. I know what I'm talking about, therefore I can try to hoax myself into thinking that I'm safe, because while I really don't care what happens to that country or that person, even my own relatives, while I really don't care what happens to them, I do care what happens to me. Therefore, I know the solutions to my personal problems. Everything I've talked about up until now is the mad scrambling of thoughts, ideas, beliefs, convictions, in which the thinker is immersed so deeply that his eyes are closed to realities. So closed that if anyone tells him this, if you were to tell him this, if you understood it yourself, the only reaction could be a rejection. If you tell him the truth, if you tell him the fact. There is no arrow more ready, more available, ready for any of us to grasp, spear would be a better word, than the spear of the lie that I already have the truth. I understand what life is all about. And it makes no difference. It makes no difference right in this class most of the time how often you are told, come on now. Way down deep inside, why don't you try being honest about the way you think, the way you feel, how petty you are? Why don't you be honest about that so that you can see the contradiction between what you claim is your state inwardly? I know what I'm talking about. I know how to solve world problems. I know how to solve my own problem. The contradiction between the claim and the reality. This slowing down that I instructed us all to do at the start would be a long step toward me noticing the difference between what I claim and what is the fact. Enough work on this over a period of not months, but many, many years. Don't waste another minute, any of you, please, for your sake. Don't waste another minute. You know what you've been doing to your life up till now. Don't waste another second. Never mind who isn't going with you or who is. Never mind anyone else in this class, as a matter of fact. You were put here to be responsible for yourself, and you had better start taking that responsibility. And one of your responsibilities is to come to truth and say, I'm sorry, but I've been very foolish. This would be the beginning of this waiting for something higher, because do you ever think of an apology? I'm talking about apology in the common simple terms that we think about it. You know, you bump into someone in the market and you say, I'm sorry about that. Or maybe you behave very badly in front of someone, but you're working on yourself and you understand the ego humiliation has to precede any growth. Ego humiliation has preceded any growth. So you go to the other person, not wanting to, of course. Who wants to apologize? It's very hard on the vanity. Not groveling, oh no. And not attempting to win his or her favor back again, oh no. But simply, you know, you're right. I was bluffing when I told you what I said, or I was all wrong when I blew up at you. Let's be friends. Makes no difference now what happens to the other person as a result of you doing this. You have deliberate... I'll tell you personally, I have done this 10,000 times in the past, in endless varieties. I found nothing more valuable. Not groveling, you understand? I was wrong. Now you're right. Right? You've come to the point where you've got to make a decision between going faster in your mental madness or slowing it down to where you're willing to take the jolt that will always be inside the slowing down, to where you see the contradictions between the way you talk, the way you behave, and realities. Accusations. We're so sick, we're so filled with fire. We don't care who we accuse for what, just as long as I can release some of my nervousness, some of my tension, so I can get something on you, and when I've got it on you, I don't have to look at myself the way I am. You watch the accusations that go through you all day long. See how many you can detect, the small ones with the other driver, the car, the clerk at the market, whatever it might be. What a relief. I'm so glad that someone told us these things before we went any further. I'm glad that I don't have to figure out the answers anymore. How startling to realize when you ask me any kind of a question, I don't have to appear intelligent. It's never worked, because I can never convince myself that that sharp answer taken from memory, I can never convince myself that that's intelligence. And the reason I can't is because it's not. How can you ever convince yourself that an illusion is a reality? We're beginning to see that this is what we're trying to do, and we can put an end to it. Now we'll shift topics still connected. And even as you remember it, uncrossing your legs could go a little slower than usual, and crossing them again. Even moving your heads. You see, now you're going to have to do two things at once. You're going to have to listen to this talk and watch when you scratch, and scratch a little slower than usual. There's an empty lot over here. Nothing on it. What would you think if a man went over to the lot and took a hammer and took a board and took some nails and tried to add an extra room into the empty lot. What would you think if a man took a piece of tar paper and his hammer and nails, went over and tried to repair the roof? Another man went over and pressed the air where the doorbell might be and tried to walk inside, or actually walked inside. The point is this. It's a very clear point. This connects with answering. You can't add anything to yourself. There's no need to add anything to yourself. There's nothing to add to yourself. You need do nothing to try to make yourself happy. Listen. You need do nothing to try to make yourself happy, secure, make yourself feel accepted. You don't have to do a thing, and not only that, but every attempt to do it encourages the illusion that what you did today, you also have to do tomorrow, and there's the rest of your life. There's your daily program. Going over to that empty lot one day with a door and trying to nail it to nothing. Taking a doorbell the next day and trying to put it up, trying to put a window up. The belief that I must add something to my life is a fundamental delusion. All right, now you have to think too. What are you trying to add to what you call yourself? Happiness, reputation, safety, security. You're trying to add and keep all the familiar things that you think about, that you know about. You live in time, and so you want the same good things to repeat themselves, and of course you don't want the bad things to repeat themselves. Think carefully now about this point, and then I'm going to go to the opposite of it in a minute. The point of trying to add something to your life in order to feel different than the way you feel now. Has it succeeded? You added that husband. What happened? You added that course down at night school. What happened? You added that new vacation. You added that new philosophy. Got the books out of the library. You added that new hobby. You added that new TV program. Nothing has changed because nothing can change. See, you understand the point. This is very difficult to explain, but here goes. You see, if I say the empty lot represents reality, or represents what's reality there. If I try to add a castle, word castle, to the lot, then you think that reality, success, whatever, happiness, whatever you want to call it, is the addition of the word castle. But what have I done? But the cunning of the mind is unbelievable in that I've said the word castle and said, I know, and it's all right for illustration's sake, but I've added a castle to the lot. Now I can live with it. The only way you will have a castle is when you have something inside that has no need of the word. Now subtraction. If I get rid of all those people who harass me, if I get rid of all exterior things and a lot of interior things too, if I subtract things from the lot, if I go over there and try to take something from the lot, am I not in equal delusion? See, if I could just get rid of this heartache, if I could subtract my heartache, then because you're moving fast, you get an answer on how to subtract your heartache. Go to the masked ball. That will subtract your heartache. Do this, do that, and your heartache will disappear. I'm trying to lead all of us right to the point where you get a little bit nervous, or you get a little bit desperate, which you are, in which you ask, well then, if I can't add anything to my life, and if I can't subtract anything from my life, what am I to do? You just tried to add something, didn't you? Didn't you? See how you walk right into it? When you ask, if neither adding or subtracting, if neither of the opposites will work for me, what will work? Who's trying to make it work? Who's it going to work for? Who are you trying to make happy? I'm telling you that there's no one there to be made happy. If you could accept that, begin to understand that, accept it in the sense of understanding. If you could begin to understand that there's no one there to be made happy, well, what do you know? Listen. Then there's no one there to be made unhappy. Do you see where we've gone so far? If I stop trying to make myself feel secure, feel solid, feel that I have a position, if I stop doing that, if I have no position at all, how can that position ever be taken away from me? A position is always in time. And what time can give you, time can also take away. You're young now. You're not going to be young all the time. You're successful now. What's that going to do 50 years from now, 100 years from now? What time can give you, time will take away. And time exists in this opposite that we're talking about. That leaves us with waiting, and not for someone to give me something, not for an event or a person to happen in order to make me feel right, because I can't add that. There's no way if I get $1 million for every day for the next 50 years, it doesn't mean a thing. I'm still unhappy. Oh, I think I'm beginning to see now. If I don't create myself starting every morning, if I don't recreate the person who must add or subtract, that's it. I mean, look, listen to what I just said. Please try to understand. I said, that's it. That's the end of it. I get up in the morning. I'm going to move around. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go shopping. And I know that I'm not doing a thing. I'm not doing a thing. Did I create myself? Did I create the energy that I have? Did I create the energy that this man has or this lady has? Did I create the sun? Did I create the world or the apple tree? I have fallen a victim to this self-glorified self that we've been talking about. I've fallen a victim to it and thought I was responsible for it. I thought I had to keep it going. If I don't move with my energy, what will happen to me? You don't know what it means to live alive. And I'm talking to to you right here in this class and those of you listening to this tape. You don't know what it means to live a live life. What you do know is your absurd obsession with trying to take the responsibility away from God to live your own life. God wants to live his life through you. These are easy to understand terms, are they not? Truth wants to live its energy through you, and will do so, can do so if given the opportunity. But I won't have that because I want two things, broadly speaking. I want to praise myself for anything good that happens, and I want to hate myself for anything bad that happens. In either case, I am safe to think that I am a self-created human being. That I am I. You are not I. I am not I. You have a name, and you have a physical body, and you have a set of habits, and you have places you go to, and everything that happens to you, you say and lie and lie and lie and say, it has happened to me. No event of any kind whatever has ever happened to you or to me or any other human being since Adam and Eve. Events happen, forces flow. Events happen, forces flow. The undeveloped mind, the immature mind, the childish mind, the self-centered mind, the self-glorified mind says, I missed that opportunity. I got that opportunity. And I frown or smile either way. There's the fundamental lie of me connecting anything and everything that happens to me with me. That's an empty lot there. And if you let the lot empty, I can't go on with the illustration, but I have to drop it. But if you left the illustration, left the lot empty, there'd be no problem. How many of you ever get insulted? Let's get a little personal. Let's get insulted. How many of you get your feelings hurt, you know? How many of you whirl around in your sick little dark world? Then you listen to what I'm telling you, and I will tell you how to free yourself from the bondage of ignorance. Isn't that nice to know that we're ignorant? Now look, I'm serious. Look, that's a legitimate word, you see. Because if I say, I'm ignorant of what my life is all about, and what the man said up there pretty much describes things, and I can get it a little bit. I'm ignorant. All right. Where there's ignorance, which belongs to the lower levels, there's also the higher level of intelligence with a capital I, cosmic understanding. Will you abandon the ignorance by which you connect every event, invest every event in an imaginary part of your mind, an imagination I should say, in which you say, that happened to me. I'm so lonely. Oh, I met that nice man. Now I'm happy. There's an enormous secret ahead of you. And I'll tell you what it is. That secret is for you to get up in the morning and appear to the people you work with or meet or your family. Appear to be to them just like everyone else, because they being asleep, they project their sleep and think you're asleep. ignorant. They think you're ignorant as they are. You get up, you have coffee, and you kiss your wife goodbye. You go to work, you go out retired or whatever you do. And you know from yourself that nothing can ever touch you. Not death itself.